Do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today I wanted to talk about the Atlanta Hawks moving on from Lloyd Pierce as the head coach of the team. This is almost kind of old news at this point. This happened earlier this week. Just didn't get around to talking about it. But today we're going to go in and do a little bit of a deep dive on Lloyd Pierce, his coaching success, and what his legacy is going to be with Atlanta, where the Hawks will go from here, and potentially what we could see, ripple effects of this for the Hawks and throughout the league. First of all, I think most people will agree with me, but Lloyd Pierce didn't really get a fair chance with this team. It's just kind of unfortunate, the scenario that he was put in, because he was brought in at the start of their rebuild a couple of years ago. This was his third season as the coach of the Hawks, so he made it through 2.5 seasons. And those first 2 years, the team was clearly not trying to win. They had Trae Young as their young cornerstone, and they brought in a ton of other young guys, got rid of a ton of veterans, and basically they're just like, okay, we're going to tank. And then this season, as soon as they're, kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, they sign a bunch of free agents, try to put together a competent roster. A ton of guys have been hurt. Guys have missed time. Bogdanovich has missed time. Gallinari has. Rondo, DeAndre Hunter. List goes on. Chris Dunn hasn't even played a game for them. And all of those signings were things that I liked in the offseason. Personally, I liked what the Hawks did with their offseason. I liked all the signings that they made and some of the moves that they made in order to, put together a more competitive roster around Trae Young. I thought they were going to be a good playoff team. And so far, they're still only a couple of games out of the playoffs. Things are very tight in the Eastern Conference right now. But they just, with all the injuries and things they've had to deal with, they have been, it's fair to say they've been underwhelming. So how much of that is Lloyd Pierce's fault? I'm really not sure. I know, I haven't been, lasered in on every single Hawks game for the past couple of years for obvious reasons, but from what I know, Hawks fans seem to, not like some of his clock management things and timeout timing and just certain little, the little things about being a coach he has not been super good at. So I guess I'll trust Hawks fans' opinions on those things. Personally, I think he's done a pretty good job. I mean, it's just so hard to judge this guy because like I said, the Hawks weren't trying to win for the first 2 years of a season, or the first 2 seasons of his tenure there, and then this last year everybody's just been hurt. So it's really, really hard to grade Lloyd Pierce. I hope he does get another chance in the NBA, just because I do have kind of a soft spot for him. I heard him on, I think he came on the Low Post or one of those other NBA podcasts that I'm sure a lot of you guys listen to. He was a guest on there, and I thought he had some great insight about he's been very involved in the political system and being in Georgia. We know that that's been sort of a big center of everything in the United States over the past couple of months with the ways that the elections have gone, and he's done a lot of great work for the community and getting people involved, getting people registered to vote, and helping out with that whole effort. So I really liked him in terms of a community guy, and I do hope he gets another chance to be a head coach in the NBA, because I just don't feel like he had a fair shake here with the Hawks. I think that's the prevailing sentiment here, but I just want to say that I definitely agree with that assessment. I just wish that he will get another chance in the NBA, and hopefully he will. But, however, I do feel like this is a move that probably had to be made, if not just for Travis Schlenk to try to save his own skin, because this, like I said, they're entering into the third year of this rebuild here. They haven't had much success over the past couple of seasons, and there have been some questionable moves. You could criticize some of the contracts he handed out in free agency. Obviously, the big miss is drafting Trae Young over Luka Doncic when you had that opportunity to draft Luka and then traded the pick, and that which became Trae Young and Cam Reddish. And then there's been a couple of other things, and Travis Schlenk, I think around the league, people are pretty clear that he is, he's on his last legs here as Hawks GM, and if they don't make the playoffs, at the very least, if they don't make the playoffs, he's going to be gone at the end of the year. So we'll just have to see how things bear out, but it's probably him making a last-ditch effort to say, okay, I'm going to try to replace the coach, see what happens, see if we can get this team back on the right track in order to try to save his own job. We see this all the time in the NBA. The coach is usually the first guy to go, and if things still don't improve, then the GM is the guy on the way out. So we'll have to see how things unfold there, but that's the first thing that comes to mind, is he's probably trying to do this in order to save his own job. And then if we can take this even further, say Travis Schlenk does lose his job as the GM, then the Hawks, we could see some, sweeping changes to this roster, even after they kind of just overhauled this whole thing in the offseason. Like I said, bringing in a ton of free agents. We could see that happen again because, every time a new regime comes in, they look at the roster and they're like, okay, well, none of these guys are necessarily guys that I like. These are all guys of the past GM, and maybe some of the rookies and young guys are not necessarily the favorite of the new regime there. Maybe some of the guys that they signed in free agency are not the favorite. So we could see a huge overhaul to the Hawks roster if they continue to struggle, if they don't have success over the next year and a half. I think we could see some big changes coming here. And the other thing that's hanging over the head of the Hawks franchise is the John Collins thing, because he's made it pretty clear that he wants a max extension on his rookie deal. The Hawks have been pretty clear that they don't want to give that to him. They say, hey, you know what, we don't think you're worth that much, but we'd like to have you back. So maybe they'll work something out. He's going to be a restricted free agent in the offseason, so maybe they'll figure something out and be able to bring him back on a fair deal that works for both sides. Or maybe it just comes down to it and they say, hey, we're going to trade you, or hey, we're going to do a sign and trade in the offseason, or they just end up not matching a contract and lose him for nothing. We'll have to see how that goes. But there's definitely the John Collins trade rumors hanging over everybody's head right now. And the trade deadline's only a couple of weeks away now. It's about 3 weeks from now. And so if they can't, get this rolling and figure this out, and they feel like their hopes at a significant playoff berth this season are dwindling, whether that's due to injuries or just not playing well or whatever the case may be, if in a couple weeks their record does not improve, I could definitely see them considering a John Collins trade, just because they're like, hey, we're not going to be good this season anyway, let's try to recoup some of this value. We don't want to pay this guy a max, and see if we can get a pick back or maybe a different young player in there. Who knows what's going to happen, right? So John Collins definitely could still be traded. Who knows if Travis Schlenk will be the guy to do that? Maybe he'll be fired by then. I have no idea. But that's definitely something to watch. Not just John Collins, being gone from this roster, but I think we could see a pretty significant overhaul if Travis Schlenk is indeed out as GM at the end of the year. So to me, the Hawks could easily become a poster boy of trying to accelerate your rebuild a little too fast. This could become a case where they said, hey, we've got this nice young core here, but we're sick of losing and we're ready to try to compete now. The Eastern Conference is wide open. We're going to try to be as good as we can right away. So they went out, spent a ton of money in free agency on a lot of veterans, bringing in guys like Gallinari and Rondo and all the guys I mentioned at the top, and signed all these guys. And what happens if they're still not very good and they have to overhaul the roster again? That could become a cautionary tale here, where if you have a rebuild, even if you nail a couple of draft picks, like Trae Young ends up being a really good player, DeAndre Hunter has looked good in his second season when he's been healthy, so you're like, okay, I like this young core here, we've got something going, let's go ahead and try to sign a bunch of guys right now. That might be jumping the gun a little bit. You might be, moving a little too quickly, and that's going to hamstring you in the future because you're not going to have any more cap space to have any more flexibility because you used it up on all these, marginal free agents in a pretty weak free agent class. And so we'll just have to see how things go from here for Atlanta, but they could be in trouble. I don't think it's really time to press the panic button or anything. Nate McMillan, I think he can come in and be a stabilizer, and we know that he can coach, even despite some of his shortcomings in the playoffs with the Pacers over the past couple of years. We know that he's a guy who definitely can coach in the NBA, and he knows what he's doing. So I think he can come in and sort of stabilize things, and hopefully they can get healthy and put things together and figure it out. But there is a doomsday scenario in Atlanta where they tried to just go a little too fast, and that's going to, cost them a couple of extra years on this rebuild. And I guess I just have to mention, if it does cost them a couple of extra years on the rebuild, would it be crazy to think that it might cost them Trae Young? Because clearly, in his second season, he was a guy that said, hey, I want to win now, try to get me some pieces, and that's what they've done here. But if everything blows up in their face, and I'm not saying that it will, but it could, if everything blows up in their face, and say they sign Trae Young to his max rookie extension, whatever, what happens if by year 2 or 3 of that rookie deal, he says, hey, this sucks, we're not winning any games, like, get me out of here? I don't know. That's a possibility. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but we'll see. And this could be, we could be seeing a pretty nightmare scenario for Atlanta here if all their free agents don't work out. Their young players, a lot of these guys, they missed on draft picks. And if their one rookie that they hit on decides that he doesn't want to be there anymore, well, then, that's a pretty tough spot to be in. But I think that's about all I have on the Atlanta Hawks and the firing of Lloyd Pierce. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about this. What do you think about Nate McMillan as the new coach? Where do the Hawks go from here? Do you think they can still try to be a playoff team even with all the injuries they've had to deal with? Would love to know your thoughts down below. But yeah, with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.